10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
This is Diane Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Diane Andrews.
Thank you, audience. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you in our shows. I appreciate the YouTube audience and Vimeo now we're on, and the 50 parishes in Louisiana that see us on television. And now we're in Mississippi also, and I've been remiss not to mention Mississippi, Liberty, Woodville, places like that. On the western part of Mississippi, we also come on Sundays. In New Orleans twice a week, in Shreveport twice a week, Alexandria, and Lafayette twice a week, Baton Rouge about 3 or 4 times a week. So come on and see Diane Andrews in Black and White. If this is your first time show, you'll know if it's not your first time show, you'll know one of my pet peeves is probably ISIS. When I first started, I did ISIS. The Middle East, they were not a JV team. You're going to see a YouTube up here that I said this when I first started in October of 2014, saying that we have no strategy, they're not a JV team, and they're killing mostly all the Christians. And recently I did a show with Coach Del Brown and a guy, Shia Muslim from Baghdad, Iraq, who flew in. And he said 20% of Iraq was Christian, which was 6 million people. And today, that is devastated with Christians. There are very few left, if any. Most have been enslaved or sex trafficked, as I did some shows on a week ago, or been killed. So come on back to Diane Andrews in Black and White if you're interested in this very, very potent subject of ISIS and Benghazi. Let's hear the real deal. People may not know Benghazi is in Libya, but is in Africa, and it is next to Egypt. So come on back to Diane Andrews in Black and White.
Order your copies now of Diane Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Diane Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.
As I just said 6 weeks ago, that we probably left too soon. And we're back out there. Whether it's airstrikes, we're still back. Just because you make a political statement that you're going to pull people out, as I said in that 6 weeks ago, we're still in career. We've been there for 70 years. We have 40,000 troops. We have a very large force. As Leon Panetta and Hillary Clinton and Bob Gates, which are both from both parties, Republicans and 2 Democrats, said they tried to get the president to leave a residual force, and Maliki, who was the prime minister of Iraq at that time, asked for 10,000 troops. We had 130,000 troops in Iraq, and we took all of them out. And now the militants, I'm going to call them because they are killing people, and they have grown from 800 to 40,000 in Iraq and another 40,000 in Syria in 3 years. It's just like if I have gangrene or diabetes with PVD, it's called, peripheral vascular disease, that the blood doesn't flow down to the foot. I want to catch that at the toe before I take off my entire leg, and that will happen because this is like a cancer that will continue to grow. Baghdadi, who is the prime minister of ISIS, or their leader, to be said, because it's really not a geography, he is their leader, and he has said, I will drown you in your own blood, America. Thank you for coming back to Diane Andrews in Black and White. I appreciate, again, you audience being here. I have with me a lieutenant colonel, and his name is Brian Bissonette. Brian ended up getting his first college degree from Bowling Green University in history. And he's a commissioned officer, I think, into the military, into the Army, to be specific. He got his master's degree from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, in strategic studies. He has done tours of duty in and out of America. He has been in Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, where I did a show on Nadal Hassan, the Muslim who was born in America, who ended up killing more people in Fort Hood, Texas, I think, than anyone has ever killed in a military base. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's also been to Iraq several times. He's been to Afghanistan. He's been to Latin America. He has been all over the world, Africa, the Middle East, and South America. And as I said, some tours of duty inside America. But currently, he is the professor of military science at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So Brian comes to us with, is it okay to call you Brian?
Absolutely.
Or just Colonel? I just said the Colonel. The Colonel comes to us with a wealth of knowledge about what's going on in the Middle East. His last tour of duty in the Middle East was over around 08, 09. So we're going to talk a little bit about Benghazi, Libya. And a lot of people don't know, and you may have seen in the news recently, in fact, we're taping this the day of the Egypt Air airliner, that they're wondering, was it a terrorist attack? The plane seemed to disintegrate, is what they're saying. And people, I think it was 66 passengers on board that plane, and they don't know what happened to the plane. The latest evidence is saying that it looks to be terrorist attacks. The plane was going from Paris, France, to Cairo, Egypt. In 2012, I was married at the time, my husband and I, in September 2012. And I know you know what happened September 2012. If you people don't know what happened in the audience watching me on television. That was when Gaddafi was killed in 2011 in Benghazi in Libya. And in 2012 was when the Benghazi incident happened, September 2012. We happened to be in Cairo, Egypt. And we went out to the airport to leave, and there were armed guards saying, get away from this airport. Cairo is 14 million people. That's where that plane was flying today that disintegrated. And I think it was very close to the airport when it went down. And for whatever reason, we'll find out soon. But Greece and Paris are now saying they think it was terrorism. That may be what happens a lot if you have open borders. They think it had to happen from somebody getting on the plane in Paris. So, but anyway, we could not get out of Cairo, Egypt. We were held there for 5 to 7 days. Some people were 7. We got out in 5. And we were on Egypt Air, which is the plane that went down today. But I tell you, people say that, and I'm not being discriminatory here, but that people with jihadis on and things are very quiet. They had women shooting at each other, throwing stuff at each other, cursing, breaking windows in this airport. The next day we could at least go in and try to get out. But it took 5 days to get out of that airport before they started full service back. And we got the last plane to New York on Egypt Air that went into New York City. So tell me what you think. That's pretty normal for you, a day at the beach over in the Middle East, wasn't it, Lieutenant Colonel?
Well, I think once you go, you know, one of the things I think we're a little spoiled here in the United States with some of the security and some of the things that we have in the U.S. You go to a lot of other parts of the world, you'll see a lot different atmosphere. Not as much, a lot of security issues, a lot of confusion. Things aren't run as we're used to as smoothly as we see in the United States. So you become used to that once you have a chance to travel a bit and get to see some other parts of the world. I was in Angola, Africa this past summer. Very small.
Is a prison named after Angola, Africa here in Louisiana? I bet it is.
I don't know.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah.
But you know, it's a very small airport. Getting through, it's a lot more difficult. You have you know, Angolan army that are there with weapons, etc., that control movement of personnel, etc. So it's a lot different than what we're used to here in the United States.
And we've gotten so much tighter since 9/11 because it was really free anybody coming in and out of our airports before, without so many security tests.
Right.
Now, when you were in Iraq, that was after the war, they call it, the 2003. The last time you were there was after the war, when we went in and we invaded and got rid of Saddam Hussein. Now, when I had Saba, who is the Shia Muslim, and as we know, Baghdad is mostly Shia Muslims, but Saddam Hussein was Sunni, because at the end of the day, in Iraq, it's a Sunni versus Shia war.
Right.
Pretty much. It is a tribal war. Those are the two big sects in that part of the world. But Saddam Hussein was able to keep control, there being a Sunni in a Shia environment. And his second in command was a Christian. So there were some good things that he did too, and I think, and give me your opinion, that America didn't understand tribal warfare, number one, and how some people have to be controlled. They need almost a dictator, and I know you and I spoke on that briefly.
Right. I think when you look back, and you look at Saddam Hussein's reign in the 70s before the war with Iran, Very westernized country. A lot of folks in Iran studied in Europe.
In Iran or Iraq, are we talking?
In Iraq, I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Women's rights were a lot more advanced than they are in other parts of the Middle East at the time.
So he didn't have Sharia law there?
No, not at the time. It was a lot more Western. He looked a lot more Western, and we were very supportive of that regime.
He was our friend for a moment there, wasn't he?
Correct. And then they went to war with Iran, and that's where a lot of the issues started at that point. 8 years of war between the Iraqis and the Iranians right there. One thing we always looked at was keeping a balance of power in the Middle East. So the idea of the opportunity that Iraq or Iran would win a war between the two countries would shift the balance of power. So because of that, there was some issues with Saddam Hussein and the United States, where we started to look at different options to ensure there wasn't one of those countries did not gain complete power in the region. And a lot of that
Do you think a lot has to do with oil?
Well, a lot of it has to do with just control of a different sort of government, different to us, that may not be friendly. And if you have one country that dominates the entire region, they dominate economically, they dominate the political landscape of the area as well.
What about Saudi Arabia, who's mostly Sunni?
Correct.
And you're going to see a map up here. You'll see it, the countries we're talking about are like going from New York to Connecticut to New Jersey. They're right. These countries are like states in America. Right. Because Libya only has 6 million people in the whole country, where Egypt has 82 million right next to it. Yeah. But so Saudi Arabia seems to not get as much verbally or publicly involved in this. They're behind the scenes more, I think, manipulating things somewhat.
Yeah, I think they're a lot more economically driven. The Saudis are major power in OPEC when it comes to trade with the oil industry, etc. A lot of wealth in Saudi Arabia because of that. But
because
they're not
of oil,
as,
pretty much,
right? Oil
and because a lot of American buying so much oil. We use, what, 40% of the world's oil, 50?
Yeah, we use quite a bit. I don't know the exact numbers, but, you know, we get oil from, you know, Angola is part of OPEC as well, so a lot of the African nations as well. I mean, you go to Houston, you have a lot of Angolans, you have a lot of people that work in the oil industry that travel from Houston to Angola for months on end to work in the oil industries out there, so, and other parts of Africa as well, and including the Middle East. So that's, of course, it's a very economically driven with the oil in those parts of the world.
Do you think ISIS, because ISIS black markets oil, they sell to Turkey, I've read, you know, in a lot of countries over there, Russia even I heard was buying some oil away as oil. So do you think that has caused some of the, because oil is cheap right now, oil is down.
Yes.
Do you think the black market that ISIS has done of oil is some of the cause that oil prices, which is good for us, because our gasoline prices are down?
Right. Well, I don't know if that has much to do with it from that perspective. I think what you notice in the Middle East is when I was in Iraq was you used to see oil being sold on the side of the street, black market oil all the time, gasoline, etc. So that system was already in place. A lot of the cigarettes that were moving across the border from Turkey and the U.S. illegally to be part of the black market system. The black market system in that part of the world was very established as it was. So it was very easy for those ISIS, as an example, to be able to tap into that black market facility and basically take it over as an income-driven or as a way to drive income.
Because they're getting billions of dollars a year by selling oil.
Right.
And now they collect taxes on people in Raqqa, Syria. Now, at first they didn't have a main geography, I guess, that we knew about, but now they have a headquarters and a capital is in Raqqa, Syria.
Right, and it goes back to the Islamic Caliphate that they believe in, which goes back to
we're going to talk a little later with someone. We're going to talk about what happened in World War II. It may not, it wasn't a jihadist or a religious war, but it was a war where we want world domination between Hitler and Japan, forming alliances together, which is the same as, I mean, al-Baghdadi Baghdadi has said, we will drown you in your own blood, America.
Yeah.
And he's going after it. And people don't realize, Middle East, and now they're in Africa also. Libya and Africa. They own the oil now.
Right, and that's part of the Caliphates, the old Moorish Empire back in the 600s.
Right.
You know, that went into all part North Africa and the southern part of Europe into the Middle East. And that's what they are trying to regain, is that what they call the Caliphate that extends that much.
Egypt, I think it's only 700 miles from Rome. It's not far.
It's not far.
Libya is not far from Rome, and people don't realize how close now ISIS is in territory to Europe.
Right.
Very close, and we know what they're doing in Paris, and now they're bombing more in Baghdad. 100 people just died. A couple of in the last month. 100 people.
Correct.
So they're bombing. They don't want to let Baghdad go, even though we've got 4,000 to 5,000 special operations, and they're helping now the Iraqi army to go forth and perform a
Right.
mission to try to take these cities back.
Right.
But they want Baghdad back.
Yeah, they do, and it's part of their process to regain what they would consider the caliphate,
Right.
which and that's part of it
Right.
there. So it's kind of expanding as much as they can is what their end state is and their goal.
Do you
is.
think when we first left, and we left 12 billion or so many $billion of our hardware, which ISIS ended up killing some of the Iraqis with American hardware. We left it there because our administration said it was too expensive to bring it back. We flew it over there, but we couldn't bring it back. And so ISIS ends up taking it. And for people who haven't watched Diana, this is probably my 7th show on ISIS. Islamic State is what IS stands for. And then you have ICE, that's Islamic State. And then you have ISIL, Islamic State of the Levant, which is a
Right.
territory. And some people call it Daesh also, which is, I guess, the same in Arabic. It means Islamic State.
Right.
Which is what the Shia Muslim Saba told me when he was on the show. So they seem to be forging ahead with their mission. I think they're in 37, 38 countries now, 36 to 40 countries. That's a lot of countries.
Right. yes.
And they've only been around less than 10 years.
Yeah, and it's tapping into a lot. I mean, things go through a process. Names change. You know, you had in Algeria, you had the Armed Islamic Group back in the 80s. Now a lot of those are part of the Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, the
Right.
AQIM piece, right there, where they trained a lot of foreign fighters in the Atlas Mountains between Algeria and Morocco. So, and a lot of fighters that went to Iraq were trained in northern Mali, the area controlled by what was called AQIM back then. So you
I
have.
didn't think they were so virulent. These people just, with social media,
Right.
has made them bigger and seem bigger to people.
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with what you've seen throughout history, and I think you go back to the Second World War, and you talk about how could the Germans do what they did to the
Rest of Europe.
well, not the rest
And
of Europe, just within their own country with the Jewish population, the Slavics,
Yes, the Holocaust.
the Holocaust, etc. And you look at that from they're able to create a dehumanization of another group of people.
Right.
So what he was able to do when he wrote this book, Mein Kampf, when Adolf Hitler did that, he was really telling people that we, as the Aryan race in that particular case, are superior to
And
these
was
other
he
groups
really
of people.
German? Was he not German is what I read. He was not full German, was he?
Well, yes, from the southern part of Germany. It's really unsure
He
exactly.
wasn't blonde and blue-eyed, which he was trying to
No,
create a
was
race
not.
of blonde, blue-eyed people.
Right.
So did he really feel inferior himself? It looks
Yeah.
like, and
He
this was
still
maybe
considered-
overcompensating?
Yeah, he still considered himself German. I mean, there's some rumors out there whether he had Jewish ancestry,
Right,
etc.
I've read that before.
Right.
Now,
but,
and the swastika, which he took and made something negative, at first was a very positive symbol, is what I've read.
Yeah, he changed. It used to be when you had the Nazi symbol, it was, you know, it was even. Then he put it on a slant, so it was more of a
Right.
diamond than a square, and that's how he changed that symbol and changed
Right.
it to be the symbol of the Nazi Party.
Right.
In that case, but it really goes back to his ability to convince people that others are less than them, that they're less than human, so people could do the atrocities that they did.
And I guess people want to believe that. They want to believe, okay, I'm superior,
yeah.
I'm different because
Right.
I'm whatever, brown and eyed and brown hair, or
Right.
blue-eyed and blonde makes you better.
Right.
People can convince you of anything, I guess. And he obviously had a way of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely was. I mean, as an orator, he was known for his ability to sway people,
Right.
to persuade people to his beliefs, and really build an organization with, in lots of cases, people that were angry because you go back to why were they
But
able
ISIS,
to
we can say
grow?
some of the same thing. A lot of
Exactly
people he's
can.
recruiting, they're recruiting from here, are angry for whatever with America.
They're angry and they believe that they're better and superior than other people in the world. That's why they're able to kill Christians and cut heads off, etc.
Right.
Because they have created this idea that they're less, that these people, Christians in this particular
Right.
case, or others in that part of the world that are non-Muslims, are less than them, and that by killing them, it's not something that's I'm
It's
not
okay to
killing
do
another
it, because
human,
this is
I'm
what
killing
Allah wants us to
somebody
do.
that's less than me.
Right.
That's correct. And when you're able to get that into people's head and create that belief inside people, that's where you start to see a lot of the atrocities that occurred that we saw during the Second World War.
Right.
We're seeing now, and we can go back to American history that we saw during the days of slavery. You know, where white Americans were able to look at slaves and say they're less than human, and we can treat them poorly
Right.
because they're not human. And that's an issue. And the thing that occurs with that, it takes a long time to switch that and change
Back,
it.
that's right, to the other way.
Because you got parents who believe
That's
that, are
right.
teaching it to their
it's
children.
ingrained.
Exactly.
People are not born to be prejudiced
No.
or to think they're better, whether it's a white slave owner or whether it's an ISIS lord over there,
Right.
almost drug lords, because they're pushing drugs out. They're doing so many things, I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
pushing people like a drug lord.
Exactly.
Sexual, you know, they say this about sex, but I understand a lot of them rape the women, the Christians. They rape them, they kill them, but
Right.
they're supposed to be such a holy person, a holy
Yeah,
land.
it's the same. It's
Have
same
you,
thing that
do
happened.
you know that too? They do rape the women and things
Yeah,
like
it's
that?
all those kind of things. Same
Yeah.
thing happened, like I said, in World War II
Yeah.
with the German guards that would
Right.
rape the Jewish women inside
But they
the
weren't religious,
concentration
you know what I'm
camps.
saying? They were just...
Yeah, it doesn't. It's whether it's religious or it's
Right.
another belief, but still the belief that someone's less than me
Yes.
and I can do whatever I want to them, and it doesn't affect me
Because
psychologically.
they're nothing but trash anyway.
Right.
They're an animal, so I can rape
Correct.
this woman. But if she's so bad of an animal, why do you want to be even raping
Yeah, well,
someone
that's
to
the
be
other
with?
piece,
Which shows how
exactly.
twisted their minds are.
Right.
Right. So what do you think we should do now? If you had the magic wand in the Middle East, what would
Right.
be your strategy?
Well, I think the first thing is it's a long-term. You have to have a long-term strategy to kind of to take this threat and diminish this threat. I don't think it'll ever go away completely, but to diminish
We'll
it to a
call
point.
something else, like a lot of ISIS. I
Right.
did a show with, he gave out attorney Michael Springman. He was in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and he was always an attorney over the consulate there as far as giving out the visas. And
Right.
he was a diplomat over there. And he said a lot of the same people, Al-Qaeda, they just changed to ISIS now. Like you were mentioning, the names
absolutely.
may change, but the philosophy is the same.
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's when you look at the long-term strategy. Obviously, the first part of the strategy is you have to eliminate the ISIS threat.
Right.
You know, and we've tried
Why
to
do you
do
think
that.
our president, and you don't answer this if you can't, being a military guy, why would you call him a JV team? We have to wrap this up in about 30 seconds, but I even said, and I saw that, and I'm not a military person when I
Right.
first started doing this show, and less than a year ago, he had no strategy.
Well, I think it comes down to there's two things that you want to do in these kind of environments. You either want to convince a group of people or an organization, in this case, to change their ways, or you want to compel them to change their ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we've tried to do over the last few years is try to convince them to change their ways and come to the diplomatic table and come up with a way
Like
to
giving
solve it.
Iran, whether we can
Right.
debate whether it's 50
Exactly.
billion or 150 billion, but
Yeah.
giving them a lot of money, and the next day Soleimani is in Russia buying missiles from them
Right.
and buying from them. Soleimani is a general in Iran who was
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, he's in charge of the
Right, and now China, they're spending money with everybody, Korea, not America.
right,
And
that's-
still said the next day, we hate you, America.
Yeah, and
we still
Soleimani's
want to
part
drown
of
you.
Soleimani is the head of the Quds Force, which does a lot of activities that are kind of under the table, kind of special ops type activities for the Iranians. But it really comes down to now with the way it's kind of expanded is you have to be able to compel them now. It's the only way you can compel them, whether it's American ground troops on the ground or if it's a which would be preferable would be a coalition of Muslim countries that are on the ground that take care of that problem themselves. But that's the only way you're going to compel
We're kind
them
of doing
to
that now
change.
with special ops, right? Because
Yeah.
we're going to have to close this out. But I will close it out with one statement that says they asked us when we left to leave 10,000 troops there. We took everybody. We left the equipment. ISIS took it over. And now we're back with 5,000 troops after people are dying.
Right.
And we ridded the whole country of Iraq of Christians, 6 million people. Thank you, Colonel, for being here. It's been a very interesting conversation. You have a lot of knowledge about the Middle East, and as you see, I have a little bit of knowledge about the Middle East, but I do have a philosophy about the Middle East. Next we're going to talk to a historian who's going to talk about some of the things that the Colonel and I talked about Hitler's reign and what history really proved of what we did in World War II to stop some of the Germans and some of the Japanese from coming into this country that we thought may want to harm us. Thank you very much. Come on back after this break.
Hello, my name is Debbie. Welcome to Debbie's Bridal, A Formal Affair.
My name is Raven. I work at Debbie's Bridal, and she makes your dreams come true.
Order your copies now of Diane Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Diane Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.
Thanks for coming back to Diane Andrews in Black and White. As you know, this is a show on Benghazi, Libya, and ISIS. And talking about, I've done 7 shows on ISIS. It's my pet peeve. I just want people to hear from a historian, Mr. Robert Baum, who has a BA and an MA in American history. He taught school for 30, 40 years, and he taught history for 30, 40 years with a concentration on World War II. So we're going to talk about Hitler a little bit, how Hitler and Japan wanted to take over America and rule the world, as ISIS with Baghdadi, with the caliphate, different reasons, but same philosophy on trying to rule and destroy America. Did we close the borders somewhat back in World War II against the Japanese, Mr. Baum?
Well, the Japanese needed the raw materials, and we were stopping them from getting it. And they wanted to dominate the world, and Hitler was trying to dominate the world from the west, and they were from the east. And so they joined together, and then they attacked us, and that was a big mistake.
Which one started first? Everyone knows Pearl Harbor.
Germany started first, and we got in with them. And then a couple
We were
years,
allies to Germany.
Yeah, well, we were friends.
I mean, Hitler
at
was
first.
Germany, so we were friends at first and then became enemies.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they attacked first, and then we got involved because we were helping Britain. And then the Japanese needed raw materials, and we were the major power in the Pacific, and so they attacked us to try to wipe us out.
Which was Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, yes, that's Pearl Harbor. And so what happened, they joined forces, and we went on with this war for several years with both of them. But we fought
Did
Germany.
we put Japanese on detention camps and kind of close the borders on immigration by maybe some Germans and maybe some Japanese, as Donald Trump is suggesting some of that be done today?
Well, some of it. In fact, we had some German prisoners in Louisiana.
Really?
And then we had big prisoner camps for the Japanese in California. And they were really treated very badly. Now, the Germans weren't treated too badly, but the Japanese, we feared them more because we just didn't understand them as a race.
Well, they had the kamikaze pilots, right, that would kill themselves. Like ISIS has the terrorists, the bombers that would kill themselves to blow up other people. Same philosophy.
In fact, is that ship we have down in the Mississippi was hit by one of the Japanese, and a bunch of guys were killed on it. But yeah, it's about the same thing. They were trying. They were willing to.
But don't you think we're doing a little differently? This administration doing differently than what we did back in World War II. Who was president? Roosevelt, Truman?
Bit. Well, back then, it was kind of like big armies. Now then, it's more smaller special forces groups fighting.
Yeah, but it's real sad. I was looking at a show on our Air Force people documentary the other day that said some of our, I think it's F1, I may have the name wrong, F1 bomber has to go and scram around to get equipment from museums because our Air Force is so depleted of money and flying jets.
Well,
bomber jets.
They have money. I know some guys.
Maybe not. I think the budget's been cut quite a bit.
Oh, it has. Yes, it has. And there's a lot of disagreement with the Air Force and the president, and they just have a different philosophy of how to fight it.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I think we're going to do okay. But I'm not sure you can really defeat these people. It's a religion.
We've got to, though.
It's a religion thing too.
Yeah.
Religion.
Whether it's with religion or whether it's with Hitler, who's trying to create a race of blonde, blue-eyed people, or Japan just wants to rule the world, we still have to defeat them or we won't be around.
That's correct.
Yeah. We're going to have to close this out, but I sure thank you for coming in, Mr. Baum. Thank you for your expertise.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.